do you define a brand?
To me, a brand is what people see, what people feel, what people hear, and the consistency around it. But it's really, how do you show up? How do you
Right.
show up as a product? How do you show up as a person? Is there consistency around it? And what does that really mean? And how does that make you feel?
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner, and today I am welcoming Alexis Gladstone to the show. So let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. First, thank you so much for being here, Alexis.
I'm so excited to be talking with you. We talk all the time, but to actually talk about something very specific, it's going to be great.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm absolutely excited to talk about, being an organizational brand leader or creating a personal leadership brand. I think we're going to have some good back and forth here. So, but before we jump into that, let me share a little bit on how you are an expert in this leadership space. So, Alexis Gladstone is a leadership development speaker, training, and coach who helps individuals and organizations become better versions of themselves. She collaborates with companies of all sizes, from fast-growing startups to Fortune 500s, to deliver and design practical, engaging programs that develop leaders, enhance team performance, and build effective teams. And whether she's running a workshop or speaking at a conference, and she is a fantastic speaker, by the way, or she's moderating a panel or coaching someone one-on-one, her work focuses on helping people become more effective, more authentic, and more human in how they lead, which all kind of ties back to branding, which we're going to get into in a
It's
second.
100%.
Yes. So even though I read your bio here, let me ask you a few questions so we can get to know you a little bit better, your
Sure.
personal brand, right? So Alexis, what are you an expert in? Or what is your superpower, so to speak?
You know, I think one of the things, it's funny because I think my superpower, so to speak, has evolved and some of it still meshes together. I used to always say my superpower is I can take the really complex, especially those complex things, and make them simple so everybody can understand them. And I think that's still true. What I do is I have a way to really talk with people and really get to the heart of what's going on or what they need and help them find a path that works for them because not every path is the same for everybody. So I think it's being able to do that with individuals and with groups, being able to engage them so that they can move forward at it more cohesively.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So, um, what lights you up about what you do? What do you get most excited about?
I get most, it's funny because I work with individuals across a variety of levels in an organization from shop floor, manufacturing all the way through C-suite.
Yeah.
And I've become really passionate about those early to mid-career leaders. I get really lit up to see their passion and to see their desire to grow and to be better. And when I see it in them, that just gives me the energy to help them even do it more.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, that's a little bit about you and how you're unique and what's exciting in terms of, how you apply your skill and all that. But let's get more specific on branding. And I'll ask you in a minute how you got to the name of your company. But first, let me ask you, how do you define a brand?
To me, a brand is what people see, what people feel, what people hear, and the consistency around it. Because that, you look at brand from a company standpoint. I'm a lot of times looking at brand from the people or the individual or a team or things like that.
Mhm.
So it's the consistency of that. But it's really, how do you show up? How do
Right.
you show up as a product? How do you show up as a person? Is there consistency around it? And what does that really mean? And how does that make you feel?
Right. Right. No, you're right, because, I talk about branding as being, it's the culmination of the messages and the experience that people has
Mhm.
with your organization, so to speak.
Right.
You have to be absolutely true and authentic in both what you say and what you do, but the same thing applies for personal branding, right? So if
Absolutely.
you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, or if you say, oh, I'm really good at this, but then your behavior or the experience people have when they interact with you is not that, then you have a miscommunication problem and a branding problem. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you for yourself, how did you get to your company name? And then what do you do to brand yourself?
So when as I always say, I fell into consulting, and that's the story for another time. But that's really how I fell into consulting, decided I wanted to stay because I thought I might have been just doing it in a short time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what do I call myself? Back when I started my company over 20 years ago, people didn't brand, if they were entrepreneurs, solopreneurs like I was, they
Yeah.
didn't brand with their name. That wasn't common like it is now.
Right.
So I actually have a friend that from grad school, and she did branding.
Okay.
And so I went out to Seattle, and we sat on her living room floor, and she took me through the branding exercise, which I'm not really good at, but she did.
Yeah.
So she took me through the exercise, and we came up, and that's where we came up. It's really a combination because some of the words that resonated with what I do are leadership, obviously,
Right.
and being intelligent about how you are, how you act, so not intelligence in terms of how smart you are, but
Yeah.
being intelligent in how you interact, behave, lead, and all of that. And so that's where Intelead came from. It's a combination of intelligence and leadership.
Nice, nice. And then how are you? I know you speak a lot and you're fabulous at it, and that's probably a key part of your marketing and your branding, right? Is there anything else that works well for you in terms of creating not only just awareness of who you are and what you do, but then that, generating that great experience so that people are like, they get that idea about leadership as well as, intelligence and
Mhm.
thoughtfulness.
I use LinkedIn. Everybody, I know there's a lot of different theories out there of how many different social media platforms you need to be on, and so I've chosen LinkedIn. I like being on one. That's where I think the majority of people who are going to interact with me are.
Hmm.
So I am, although I haven't been as good as all the time,
Yeah.
is try to be consistent in posting, and not just posting about me and what I'm doing, because one piece of my brand is highlighting other people
Yeah.
and uplifting other people. So I do that as much as I can, as well as, posting about things I've done or people I'm interacting with, thought leadership around, different things, my blog on my website. So all of those different types of things to kind of show the different aspects of who I am and what Interlead is.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Do I get high marks as a branding person for you from that?
You get high marks. Awesome.
Okay, just checking.
Very high marks. No, you are very giving on LinkedIn in terms of, yeah, like you said, elevating other people's content, giving them shout outs, and making them just generally feel good on LinkedIn. So I appreciate it when you do that for me. So,
Okay, I'll do it more then.
okay, awesome. Awesome. So let's move in now and just talk a little bit more generally about the role of the CEO and the leadership team in terms of defining and driving the brand throughout an organization, right? So I talk all the time with my clients who are usually founders, CEOs of businesses that are
Mhm.
scaling about 1 to about 15 million. And I talk to them all the time and I say, you are the steward of the brand. You set the
Mhm.
tone, you are the ones people look to for inspiration in terms of, well, how are we supposed to treat this customer? Or what are we supposed to say about our
Right.
company, right? So, do you agree with that? And then what have you seen? Do leaders step up and realize that they have that important responsibility?
I think yes and no. I mean, just like everything else.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I see, because one of the pieces that I haven't done lately, but I have done in the past, is if an organization is rebranding, let's say,
Mhm.
it's not just to the external
Right.
world. It's to their team, it's to their organization, whether they're an organization of five or an organization of 5,000.
Right.
People inside the organization have to understand it and understand what it means and what it looks like, just like you were saying.
Hmm.
And that's where I think a lot of leaders at any level of the organization miss the boat. They forget that how they, as you say, kind of interact with the external brand, whatever our brand is in the external, it also needs to translate internally so people are making good decisions, people are understanding why decisions are made,
Hmm.
and all of that. So yes, they are the stewards, but not just to the external world.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Because again, within any organization, but especially let's say service businesses where your people are your product
Mhm.
basically, right? So, and every time someone in your organization interacts with a client or a customer, it's a touch point. It's a brand. It is a moment in time where you could make or break the brand, right? So why
Right.
wouldn't you educate all of your employees on what that experience is supposed to look like, how they are supposed to interact with clients and deliver and be part of that brand promise. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I have a client who, this was a number of years ago, was talking about somebody inside the organization who was representing the organization at a training.
Hmm.
They were leading the training, and their behaviors in the evening were completely not on brand or
Mm.
appropriate for that organization.
Right.
So those things people don't understand. It's like when you are traveling for work, you are representing the company, whether you are at the conference, at the training, at the client site, and even when you're sitting in the hotel lobby,
Right.
because somebody's going to say, where do you work? If you're having a conversation, and that might come up. So you're still representing the company there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, have you seen some unique ways maybe that leadership walks the talk or communicates the brand to their employees? Have you seen anything that's really effective?
I don't know if I'd say unique, but I think what has to happen is it has to be reinforced all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're an organization that has, quarterly town halls or whatever you might call them, or whatever the case may be, the brand story, or the reinforcement of the brand should be part of that agenda
Yeah.
if you want to carry it forward, if you want to make sure it sticks. Because let's be real, we all get really busy, we all put our heads down, we all do whatever we need to do to work, and we sometimes forget. And we
Yeah.
all need to be reminded. I need to be reminded, and
Sure.
I have nobody to remind me. So,
Yeah. I'll
that's just
remind you,
kind of, oh,
Alexis.
thank you, Sue. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I think I read, and I wish I could remember where it was I read. I did read something about how some president or CEO, every time he sent out all company communication, he
Uh-huh.
had something at the end of reinforcing or reminding people about their responsibility for the brand. I can't recall who it was or what kind of an organization it was.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen some very interesting things that my clients have done with and without my help, but and I think I've told this story in the podcast before, but I loved way back at the beginning when I started doing brand strategy and consulting, there was a CEO of an IT consulting firm, and he had the agency that I was with at the time, he had us print up these little cards which had the core values on one side
Mhm.
and the brand promise on the other. And no matter what meeting you were in with him, he would throw it on the table in the middle of the meeting, and you were not allowed to walk out of the meeting until he held up the card and he said, is the decision that we just made adhering to our core values? Yes, no.
Mm.
And is it strengthening our brand promise? And if it's not, he would then make them sit back down and rethink about what their decision was. And I was like, man, you cannot get more of a litmus test on, constantly, checking your strategic decisions as to whether they were working for the brand or not. And I thought that was fabulous. But I
I
have
love that.
oh, I know. It's fabulous. And I have another client who, like you were just talking about, every quarter they go through and they say, all right, here's state of the company. But one of the key points of the state of the company meeting is again, here are our core values, and here is what our brand stands for. And a lot of times after I do my big brand engagement, the CEO will have me present to the organization and say, I just want to stand up here and I want to explain what the brand is. I want to explain what that means to all of you because you are all absolutely essential in making this brand come to life. And then the CEO would then take and use those slides in onboarding, which is the perfect time to do that
Right.
because you've got someone brand new coming in who's ready to learn and they're a sponge. It's like, here's the brand, here's how it shows up, here's how we expect that. So,
Well, I think a good point though, Sue, is go back, your first story with the card with the values and brand. You can't just make the cards, give them to everybody and think you're done.
right,
And
right.
that's what so many organizations do. Well,
Yeah,
we've posted our brand promise or we've posted our values or, why we exist or what we do for our clients, whatever that is. It's
yeah,
there, but no,
right.
that's not enough.
Right.
So,
It's not enough, and this was something I read about. I have not actually seen it in action, but there was a company that I read about where they had a great brand ambassador program. And what they would do is at the quarterly town halls, they would nominate someone who was the brand ambassador of the quarter, meaning they did something that absolutely exemplified what the brand stood for and the core values. And so they would stand up and have the person say, well, here's what the client asked me to do, and here's how I solved it. And then everyone would be like, oh, great. That's exactly what the brand, just so that you can create stories around
right.
the brand. So, core values are just some words kind of on a poster or on a, postcard and things like that. But what does it mean to have that be in action? What does that look like? Right?
Exactly. That's the missing piece
Yeah.
most of the time is
Yeah.
how does that show up in your behaviors and your decisions?
Right, exactly. And then one last thing I'll throw out as an example that I loved was a client that we had. They were a car accessory manufacturer. And one of the key things they did after we did the whole brand engagement for them to figure out, one of the pieces of the brand engagement was, well, who is your ideal target market? And everyone in that organization needs to understand who
Mhm.
that person is, right? The target market persona. So we created target market personas into posters and put them up everywhere in the engineering department because they wanted
So,
the engineers to look up and say, I'm designing this product for that person. Are they
mhm.
going to like this? Are they going to use it? And it actually was a big hit
Oh, that's
at the
awesome.
company because again, who, the engineers were saying, well, no one ever talks to us about who the customer is in this kind of detail and things like that, and reminds us constantly, when we're trying to develop products and stuff. So I thought that was another awesome way to get the brand out. So, all right.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I don't know why this flashed into my head,
Uh-huh.
but how every October, so many organizations create whatever their product is in pink because it's a brand, it's a cool branding thing,
Yeah.
but they're missing, when you said who's the target, they're missing the core and the target because women don't necessarily want something pink.
Right. Exactly. Or if the whole rest of the year you don't support women's causes or health
Right.
causes or anything
Or
else,
whatever. Yeah.
well, then it's just a marketing ploy, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
You tried to generate some goodwill for the month of October, and it's going to backfire if people don't see anything else to back that up. So,
Right.
yeah. So, all right, let's shift gears a little minute and talk about something that I think is kind of intriguing.
Uh-oh.
There's been a rise lately of organizations where the CEO becomes a brand in and of themselves,
Hmm.
right? Outside of the organization. There was obviously the leader from Zappos, you've got
Hmm.
Jeff Bezos, you definitely have these CEOs that are larger than life. And in smaller organizations, especially founders who are growing and scaling,
Hmm.
a lot of the brand is the founder's personality. It's just naturally falls out that
Right.
way. And then the goal is how do we take the characteristics of the leader and the founder and infuse them into the culture and the brand of the entire organization. But beyond the CEO level, is there any value to leaders, executive team members, or even team leaders and things like that having a brand? Does that help the organization and does that help the leader?
Well, as when I talk with different groups and, and this is one of the things I talk about, standing out as individuals, whether we like it or not, we are all a brand.
Yes.
because people are making judgments and decisions about how we show up, what we say, whatever the case may be. And that's true whether you work inside an organization or whether you're an entrepreneur or founder, like you said, who may be an
Hmm.
N of one until their organization starts to grow and they can start hiring people. So you need to manage that. And you need to, if you are part of an organization, not only manage your personal brand, make sure it's aligned, make sure do your values align with the organization and the brand and the values of the organization, and then decide how you want to show up as a leader. What do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? How do you want to interact? Because people are going to make those judgments, and if you can have your behaviors match what you think is important for the team and the organization to move forward, that's where the real power comes.
Right. Right. No, I like that. I like that. And then, I kind of look at it, there's within branding, if you get into thinking about brand architecture a little bit, there's concepts about how you brand your organization, especially if you have products, right?
Mhm.
So then you could have an umbrella brand where everything is the main name of the company, and that's the big brand, and the products are just a bunch of nomenclatures or nothing too exciting. Or you can have what they call a house of brand strategy, which means that kind of like Procter and Gamble, you have
Okay.
all these individual brands underneath Procter and Gamble, and the individual brands are certainly in many cases more important than just the Procter and Gamble
Right.
signature. But I look at it and kind of say, I think there's value to an organization treating almost their leaders with strong personal brands as a house of brands, meaning look at our organization umbrella and look at all the individual branded executives or experts that we have underneath our umbrella.
Yeah. And if you think about that, if you hire the right people with the right skills and knowledge,
Hmm.
that's part of what your brand is. Part of your brand is your expertise.
Yeah.
Your individual brand is what expertise, whether you're good at building a team, whether you're good at motivating a sales team and getting
Right.
the most out of the sales organization, whether you are good at product development. So that's a piece of your brand
Right.
is kind of the what you do and then how you do it. So how you interact, how you speak to people, develop people, if you're a leader, are you developing people? Maybe there's some people who are really good at developing their team members and some that is not quite their forte, but they're good at leading and motivating.
Right.
So they can lean on their colleagues or lean on, other resources in the organization. So yeah, I think it can happen. I think it's that whole hiring for if I'm the CEO and it's like, okay, I'm not really good at this. I want to hire somebody who really is,
Right.
because then I know I can give everything to them. So yes, it can absolutely work that way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's some strong benefits to it. There's obviously, a negative or a con if that particular executive views building their own brand as more important than
Then,
being a part of the organization, or they feel like the power or the strength
mhm.
for people wanting to work with this organization is on them, not on everyone else. But in general, I mean, for an organization, why not have your executive team or like we said, key specialized people within your operations brand themselves a little bit strongly externally because, it increases trust and credibility. Because if you've got experts and specialists within your organization, it's wow, they tend to attract amazing people or they have the right
Right.
skill set to apply to my problem. We're going to work with them. It also gives you enhanced visibility or reach because each individual executive with their brand might reach audiences that the organization doesn't or
Yeah.
can't, right?
Well, that's what I was just thinking as you were talking. It's like, yes, the CEO can go out and, do whatever the CEO does. But if you have a really strong marketer, if you're, marketing exec, and they're out speaking
Yeah.
about things, also making sure that, how they talk about it represents the brand. And then you have a really strong IT, maybe the CIO is really strong and can talk about the use of technology and how it helps and how it's, impacts the brand and things like that. But you can have these different people speaking to, like you said, these different audiences,
Hmm.
reaching different people, reaching potential customers, reaching potential employees,
Yep.
who are sitting and just continuing to get the word out about the brand of the organization into venues that might not get to as easily.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that was going to be my last point was, if you have these brands, these personal brands, these executives within your organization, man, that would help you attract top talent because there's
Mhm.
got to be people out there that are just saying, wow, I want to work for this company because I'll get access to so and so,
Right.
or, I'll get to work for Jane, or I'll get to work for John, or, someone that you feel is like just a thought leader or an industry guru. And I'm going to go work for this company because obviously they're all there. And so that could be a great way to differentiate and attract talent. So
Absolutely. I
that's
mean, I just recently heard of an organization that is only letting one person go and do the speaking circuit. And it's like, well, what are you missing out on?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I've got two more questions for you. And then this
Okay.
one, you can push back on this one. It may be a weird throwaway question, but you do a lot of work with women in leadership,
Mhm.
which I think is amazing, and absolutely admire you for that. So is there any difference or advantage or challenge that female leaders face when it comes to communicating and rallying their team around the brand? Or am I just trying to make controversy where there is no, or, challenge?
I think it depends on the
Okay.
organization, first of all. I think female leaders in a lot of organizations have all kinds of unique challenges that their
Mhm.
male counterparts may not have
Right.
just because of expectations of how we show up
Okay.
as a leader in an organization. I don't know how that impacts the brand side of things.
Okay.
So I think that's probably a longer conversation.
Longer conversation. Exactly. So, okay. All right, good. Well, then let me ask you one last question. And this is something I ask all my guests at the end, is because
Uh-oh.
I'm trying really hard to honor small businesses that are doing a great job in branding. Is there a company, a product, an organization, a nonprofit, anyone who you think is small but does an amazing job with their branding?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. I'm sure there is, but I
Yeah.
think you've caught me that
Okay.
you know what, an hour after we are done with this, I'm sure I'll think of the perfect response for you.
Exactly. Well, then just email me and we'll add
I,
it on to the
and you
end.
can add it to the notes.
Yeah, exactly. We will add it to the notes and move forward from there. So awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, Alexis, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your insights on branding and personal branding and leadership. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Always fun.
Yeah, thank you. So, if people want to talk with you about leadership, effective team building, or becoming a better version of themselves, how can they find you?
As I said, LinkedIn is a great way to find me. So you can go ahead and connect. My recommendation is if you connect to me, tell me you connected because of this podcast, and I'll send you a little gift on my personal how to stand out in personal branding. You can also find me on my website at intelead.com,
Excellent.
Intelead.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could help me build a strong brand following for this show. So please share the episode and be sure to like, subscribe, or leave a review. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.